Hey y'all, I'm DaCaptain, and this is Sailing on the Spectrum, where I talk about the challenges growing up with autism spectrum disorder. Welcome aboard. Today I want to just do a video here before the sun sets on World Autism Awareness Day. That's today, April 2nd. Um, you might be seeing the video the day after, depending on when you actually get up to seeing it. But I guess today I just want to discuss briefly the question of, should you tell the ones you know, like your friends or your worker or coworkers, if you're on the spectrum? I guess, yeah, the answer to that is you can if you want, but you shouldn't feel like you have to in order to be in a better position with any of them. And in my personal experience, I didn't officially receive an autism spectrum diagnosis until I was after college. I didn't even find out about what Asperger's syndrome was until after college. I had heard of autism, but I didn't know much about it, and I didn't understand it. And as it turns out, a lot of people especially in the United States, didn't really know much about it until right about the early 2000s. And that's while I was just graduating college. I had quite a bit of, friends and been in a lot of places, and had been through a lot of challenges, all the while not exactly knowing why I had the difficulties I knew that I had. And I went through a great deal of my life just wondering why it is I felt like I had a deficit with compared to everybody else. And it's like, I guess it was frustrating because it seemed like for others who really had what you say is a handicap or a disability of some sort, they'd had a more obvious explanation for it. Maybe they had, I don't know, I'm just thinking of examples. Muscular dystrophy, obvious, that's obvious one. Or they had cerebral palsy, or they had, I don't know, Down syndrome. I mean, it's, but I guess if you were on the autism spectrum, especially if you were in the high functioning end of it, like I was, where you didn't really had a really noticeable speech delay, you probably were viewed as somebody who ought to be doing things normal like everybody else, but for some reason you just didn't quite get that. Yeah, I don't know. But if you get to the point where I did, where eventually you felt like you could have a diagnosis, and you had a formal diagnosis from a professional, and you understood finally the reason why you had the difficulties that you had, then you probably got to the point where you're like I did, where you'd wonder, well, maybe if I get to know people, or if there's people I already know, maybe I ought to, explain to them why I am the way I am. But in a way, that's good if you want to, just share yourself with them in a way that's genuine, and did you genuinely want them to get to know you better, and you want to be able to have a way of opening up and get to know them better. But then there's another sense in which you feel like maybe you ought to do that because that's the only way they're going to accept you. And if that's the case, that's probably not the good reason to do it. You should do it. You should, you certainly don't have to tell people that right off the bat. In fact, you probably may end up never telling some of the people you know. I mean, if there's people you get to know as really good friends, obviously you can share that detail with them, just like they share intimate details about themselves if you get to be good friends with them. I remember probably around the time when I had been diagnosed, I remember one girl I was trying to impress at the time that I kind of, was very eager to tell about it. And she was very accepting. But the thing is, and she made it clear she was accepting of me regardless of that fact. Uh, and I remember as the things turned out in my life, I had actually already met my future wife at that point, but we had already been friends, but we had at this point in time, after I'd finished college, because we met in college, but we'd already kind of gone separate ways. The opportunity never arose for me to actually pursue her, even though I kind of liked her. But she was only in college a short time, and I had just finished college, or just finishing college when we got to know each other. But when we first knew each other, she didn't know and I didn't know that I was actually on the autism spectrum. But years later, when we got back together again, it was like wonderful because, we got to be good friends again and started dating. But she fell in love with me and I knew I was in love with her. But the fact that I was on the autism spectrum wasn't something that got in the way of that. It was just something that was part of who I was that she got to know better. And she was in love with more and more as time went on. And it's not just that it's only the person you fall in love with who could ever accept you if you're on the autism spectrum. It's just people who I have plenty of friends and plenty of friends I got to know who just totally loved me for who I was. And the fact that I was on the autism spectrum isn't anything that changed that one way or another. And those who may view you through a different lens because you're on the autism spectrum may be people who probably are those who may not understand you and may not be friends or good enough friends with you to begin with. And it's important to understand that people who get to know you and come to know that in whatever ways, either if you tell them or if they come to realize on their own that you're on the autism spectrum, they'll get to know you and they'll get to love you and appreciate you for who you are, no matter whether you're on the autism spectrum or not. It's not like it's a deal breaker in some way. So that's something to keep in mind. Autism, being on the autism spectrum is not a deal breaker if you, depending on where you are in your relationship with friends or if your relationship with a potential romantic partner or your spouse or a potential employer. You may not even need to necessarily rat yourself out on a resume with that. In fact, it's just the kind of thing where you can definitely have the need for accommodations that may be necessary depending on where you work. But let's face it, you're not expected to work everywhere and anywhere. Nobody is. Otherwise, otherwise getting a job would be a lot easier for everybody. But, don't feel like you have to apologize for who you are. Because I certainly have struggled with that a lot my whole life. And you'll find out a lot that the people who love you for who you are will not want you to apologize for who you are at all. And that's just something to remember when you are thinking about autism awareness, as we have Autism Awareness Day, and actually April is Autism Awareness Month. It's been also called Autism Acceptance Month. That may be a better word for it. I really don't care which term you choose, as long as you are approaching the subject of autism in the right spirit, whether you are on the spectrum or you know someone who's on the spectrum. So just keep that in mind. And this is DaCaptain, and I'll be seeing you on our next voyage. And be sure to like and subscribe, and also check out my blog. I'll have the links in the description. See you next time. Bye.